Aloha kako. Welcome back to another Mo'olelo Monday. This Mo'olelo Monday is actually being recorded in Nagoya, Japan. So the shot that you saw at the beginning of the video is actually the city streets, which is pretty cool. We just arrived here today, well, during the day of this recording, and spent the entire day out. We just got back, and it's currently like, was it like 11 o'clock? 11 o'clock at night. I thought perhaps that since we are in the land of the rising sun, I could tell some stories that are of the Nihonjin nature. So the Japanese people are pretty prevalent in Hawaii. There were very close ties from our monarchy. At one point, we did have talks of one of our crown princesses being betrothed to the son of the Emperor of Japan. Typical to have marriages of unions made without love, just for benefits of increasing, property or power, money. And fortunately, our princess decided she was not going to marry that way, and she refused. So no love lost there, because it's not like the emperor's son was interested in marrying somebody from the island kingdom of Hawaii anyway. But anyway, I figured I could keep this Mo'olelo Monday short and just tell a few tales dealing with Japanese culture. In the early 2010s, spooky kind investigations were part of a group of local ghost hunters and paranormal researchers that were part of this Legends of Hawaii show that was produced by the Travel Channel. In our segment, our particular segment, for spooky kind anyway, was we were hunting the Inugami in Nu'uanu. Now, I'm not 100% sure about this particular story. I know that this event where this individual came across a dog-like creature that sounded ferocious in Nu'uanu. I know that they had an experience, and their experience, I'm not sure if it was Inugami or not, because we have stories, ancient stories in Hawaii about ghost dogs and other dog apparition stories in Nu'uanu. And so there are like even in personal experiences of me being in that area, I have on occasion experienced canine phantoms. So Inugami or not, I don't know, but they definitely were dogs. But I just can't say that they were like vicious demon dogs. So when that Travel Channel came out and they were doing those tales, and we got stuck with the Inugami tale, it was news to me, as I've never heard anything about a Japanese demonic dog, ghost dog, living up in the Nu'uanu. It was like the first time I'd ever heard of it. I'm not sure exactly if that constitutes a Japanese ghost story, but of course the Travel Channel is looking for a way to exploit a place that people want to see, Hawaii, right? That's the backdrop, and they want to record something that people are intrigued in or interested in. They want to see, which is the paranormal. At the time, it was anyway. And so they went through great lengths to totally like dirty and muddy their own name. They've lost their credibility when it comes to being a serious like place. But then again, all these channels are just looking for the money, right? And they're just looking for something that's going to sell. And they got what they wanted, and they used groups such as Spooky Kind, who are dedicated to real paranormal, not just, just a quick fix or buck, or just looking for the hottest story to get likes, clicks, or views, or whatever you call it nowadays. It kind of gives us a bad name because we were part of that production. Some of the evidence that in fact, all the evidence that they put up on top of the show at the end of it anyway, was all falsified. It was stuff that really didn't. I'm not going to say it didn't happen, but not in the way that they made it work out. So, I remember that night when we were walking through the forest and we had made our way to the edge of the stream and we're looking out into the darkness across the way. I remember actually literally hearing like something like growling. And of course, when they played the video, or when they created the edit that they played on TV, they added embellishment to the growl, and it wasn't anything like what I heard, because I actually mimicked the growl on the screen. It had nothing to do with the Cujo growl. It was more like a know your role kind of growl. It's just kind of like stay back kind of thing. But the one that they put was like more menacing, more ferocious. And then there was a moment where we caught something beaming off of the heat sensor, and that stuff could not be identified. And they just took that information and they tried to play it out as if there was dogs in the bushes staring at us. So yeah, it was a little disheartening to be a part of something that was basically going to just try to make a quick buck, and use people like us, people who just love their home and are doing what they can to help others deal with their certain issues, and just completely like treat them the way they did. But the Inugami, demon dog, whether or not it was, I'm not sure, but that would probably be one of the tales. And you can actually, if you want, I have the Inugami investigation on the channel, and that basically what I did was I put that video up in the hopes of following it up with another video talking about what went on during the production, as well as our experiences with that and the false evidence they found. And I figured, this is a good place for me to kind of drop that knowledge down, since I'm talking about the Japanese ghost stories. So you can check that video out, and see it. It's up on top of my channel somewhere in the investigations, I'm sure. I can't remember where I put it in my playlists, but yeah. Let's see. Oh yeah. So there was this one story that I was told a long time ago when I was, maybe I was in 5th grade. The teacher during elementary, I can't remember, maybe it was Halloween or something and they wanted to share something spooky. But basically she tells us the story that happened to her and her mom. I can't remember where she said she lived. I think it was in Honolulu or something. Makiki, I have no idea, I can't remember. But basically what happened was she and her mom were inside their home, and I think they were either cooking something or they were cleaning the kitchen, but they hear this really, really strange noise, and it's coming from outside. They can hear it coming through the kitchen window. And so it was kind of like a clock, 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 this kind of like weird knocking sound, and it sounded like it was hitting the ground. So the mom heard it and mentioned to our teacher to go and check out what the sound was, because it was really weird. Anyway, she runs over to the living room where there's a window, and she looks out. When she looks out the window, she sees this tail end of a person wearing a fancy dress outside, just outside the window. So she calls out and says, "Oh, mom, someone's here." So the mom calls back and says, "Well, who is it?" So she runs over to the next, opening. I can't remember if it was the door or if it was another window, but she goes and runs over to the window, and she finally sees this person creating this noise. And this person is kind of walking hunched over, and she's got a colorful kimono on her, as well as wooden shoes. So these wooden shoes that were worn usually around the moistened earth, like at rice paddies and whatnot. These wooden shoes would help them to walk without falling or getting their feet dirty. It would kind of like be platforms. These wooden shoes were the things that were creating that clock clock noise on top of the cement outside. And so, seeing that, my teacher had called out to the mom and her mom again and says, "Mom, it's some lady outside with funny looking clothes." She hadn't seen it in any of these clothes before because it was very traditionally Japanese. And so, what ended up happening was her mother was like, "What?" Yeah, and then so of course the body goes past the opening, and so she runs into the kitchen to see. Yeah, there's a lady outside, wearing funny clothes. And so the mom's like, "That doesn't make any sense." So the clock, 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 clock noise is getting closer and it's coming up to their kitchen. Anyway, this the Japanese woman wearing her bright colored kimono, making these loud noises with her wooden shoes, takes the corner and comes in front of the kitchen window where the mom gets a good clean look at her, and this woman freaks out both my teacher and her parent because she looks right into the window and her face is completely gone. She ain't got no face. No eyes, no eyebrows, no eyelashes, no nose, nostrils, mouth, nothing. It's just completely flat. And it freaked my teacher out. So she ended her story there. Now I would see, normally I would say, hey, you should ask this person or that person to tell you their story, but unfortunately I can't remember who told me that story. I can't remember if it was my 5th grade teacher. I can't remember if it was my 4th grade teacher. I can't even remember if it was a what's that called? A substitute teacher. But it was one of the coolest and earliest known stories that I was ever told by an adult. Like that wasn't part of my family. So pretty interesting. A while back, we used to have this place called the Wildlife Drive-In, and it became popular, but not because of the business. It became popular because there's this particular attendee that went to the drive-in that caught the attention of many, many people, including the newspaper. So basically, what happened was the Wildlife Drive-In is located, well, it used to be located up at Kaimuki. And what happened was one night, a group of women were going to use the restroom at the drive-in, and they noticed that this gal was standing in the mirror, or standing in front of the sinks, and she was brushing her hair in the mirror. A lady had looked at the person, at the girl that was brushing her face, brushing her hair, and realized that when they looked at her face, it was completely flat. So, the people, she's like, "Oh my gosh, the woman doesn't have a face." They come running out of the bathroom and they're freaking out because this faceless woman is standing in front of the mirror and she's just brushing her hair. Now, there are different iterations of that story, or actually different, events, like happening at a different date. Now, whether or not those are true, I am not sure. However, the one that I just told you about being in the newspaper kind of gives it some credibility, right? Gives the story some merit anyway. But yeah, so there were other stories about people going in through, or women going into the lavatory. They see the faceless ghost brushing her hair, and they know already because she had become famous. They knew when they see the woman brushing her hair in front of the window, or should I say the mirror. They know it's the faceless woman, or what they called it, nicknamed it Mujina. And so the stories kept adding up, adding up. More and more people were starting to witness her. More and more people were getting freaked out. But they had actually knocked the Waialae Drive-In down, and they built, I believe, a Zippy's, a restaurant in its stead. But it's funny because right across the street, going towards the east, there's actually a cemetery from where the drive-in used to be. There's actually a cemetery, so it kind of makes me wonder if there were more plots and more people buried where Waialae Drive-In was, and because their bodies were left there and the headstones removed or whatever, maybe that's the reason why this faceless woman was appearing at the drive-in. I've heard that since knocking down Waialae, the faceless woman doesn't appear in that area. But no, it appears she is coming out and visiting or manifesting at the patrons in the Kahala Mall. So when you walk into the Kahala Mall, one side, I believe it was, I don't know if it's still there, but there was a candy shop. And across the candy shop, there was stairs going down, and the stairs going down leads you to a bathroom. And this hallway, this long hallway at the base of the stairs leads to the bathroom, but it's lined with a bunch of mirrors. There's a bunch of wall mirrors. And I always thought it was kind of weird, creepy that those mirrors were there. Always made me feel like as I'm walking down the halls, like somebody was going to come walk behind me and I'd see them in the mirror. But as soon as they'd pass, like no one would pass me physically, but you know, you could feel them brush pressure. But anyway, there's just something that would go on in the head and just make me wonder, you know. But from what I heard, the faceless woman, the Magina, actually has been appearing in that downstairs restroom at Kahala Mall. So, very, very interesting. My own personal story, besides that old woman that was inside the tunnels that didn't have a face and looked like her skin was rippling from the water, rainwater dripping on it. One of the only other stories I have about the faceless person or faceless woman is one day I did something really stupid. So I was going to school at the UH. I started to eat when I was doing my artwork. And that's a big no-no. You shouldn't actually be eating while you're working on art. There's a lot of reasons why you shouldn't, but I learned the hard way that I shouldn't have been eating while I was working on my three-dimensional clay sculpture. And I'm over standing there, I'm over there working the material, trying to create a bust, you know, person's shoulders, neck, and face. And what ends up happening is I don't realize that my clay has already gathered some kind of mold or some kind of something on it. But I'm eating almonds as I'm working on this thing. And what ends up happening is I ingest this mold, and this mold just completely wipes me out. Like, it makes me utterly sick. And I think that was probably like the first time I've ever experienced like vertigo. Was after eating those almonds that were laced or coated in mold from the clay artwork. Anyway, so I'm sick as a dog. My wife is driving me home. She's telling me I should take you to the hospital. I should take you to the doctor so you can go to your dentist. I'm like, no, we don't have time. We don't have money, and that's fine. I'll just drink some water. I'll get over it. And it was funny because I get home, I basically fall on the floor and I die. I just stay there for ever, what seemed like ever. And I remember falling asleep. I fell asleep at the base or the foot of our couch. And before I had fallen asleep, my wife was sitting on the couch with her legs, like I'm laying on the ground on my side, and she's sitting on the couch that I'm laying next to, and she had her feet draped over my stomach and chest area while I was sleeping. Anyway, something had roused me. Something had woke me up. And when I opened my eyes, I realized that my wife's legs were no longer there. So I was kind of like, oh, where'd she go? Anyway, I look up from where I was laying down. I open my eyes and I look over towards the steps, towards the stairs leading up to the second floor. And I see this person standing in front at the base of the stairs. I see this person that looks a lot like Yara, looks a lot like my wife. The feet, the calves, the legs, all the same until I get to the clothing. So I'm looking at the clothing, and this person, the stranger that's in my home, she's wearing pink shorts and a green t-shirt. I was thinking to myself, the shirt and the shorts were the style of clothing that my wife would wear, but she didn't have a pink version of those shorts, and she did not have a green shirt at all anywhere in her inventory. So it kind of freaked me out because now here's my wife standing at the base of the steps wearing clothes that I'd never seen her wearing before. But you know what it does? It just makes my brain kind of like go, there's something wrong. Right? And I couldn't put my finger on it, but I noticed something was off. And it didn't dawn on me until after that I realized the clothes was different colors. My wife didn't own any clothing in that kind of color orientation. Sorry. So what ends up happening is I look up at her face, her head at least, and the shape of the head looks just like my wife, and it's even got a really high ponytail, or should I say bun, a high tittle bun. And I'm like, okay, that looks a lot like her. But when this thing turned its head, looked at me on the ground, kind of tilted its head down, the face was flat. I don't know what's up with these featureless faced people, but basically, yeah, she didn't have a face, and this thing looked at me for a few seconds until it shocked me, until I finally realized, hello, fool, it's a faceless woman in your house. So I'm like, hey, and when I said that, she turned and looked back. She looked up without eyes. She looked up towards the top of the steps, and then she slowly took her step up and disappeared, going up the stairs behind the stairwell. So I got up as quick as I could without throwing up. I made my way over to the steps, and I look up there. I feel this cold breeze, which never ever happens in that home. I feel this cold breeze coming down the steps, and it washes over me. And I'm like, what the heck? And I was like, babe, calling out to my wife. And anyway, I hear her voice, and she says, yeah, what's the matter? And so I turn my head away from the stairwell, and I look down the living room wall, and inside the downstairs bathroom, my wife was using it. She was downstairs, and she was busy. She was preoccupied in the restroom, and I was just like, oh my gosh, so who the heck was that coming up our stairs? So that's it's a faceless woman story for you, which was inspired by the Mujina, the faceless woman of Wailai Drive-In. Yeah. What's another story? What is another story I can think of? Let's see. China, Japan. I'm trying to think of another one. Yeah. Probably having brain farts because I'm so exhausted. It was such a long day today. So we just flew in to Nagoya here, and we didn't get checked in until I want to say 40 minutes ago. We didn't get checked in, and it is super late right now. You guys got to see outside. It's like almost midnight. in Japan time, 4:30 at home. Jeez, I know there was another story I wanted to talk. See, and you know what? That's one of the reasons why it's so important to write down notes and stuff like that, so that I actually have um, bullet points that I have to stick to and bring up, right? But I'm just doing it on the cuff over here, off the cuff, and I'm flubbing it. But like I said, it doesn't help that I'm also tired. So we were doing an investigation one night, and I just so happened to make my way into the Japanese house. The house is pretty quiet for the most part, but in the back of the Japanese house, there's a place like a kitchen or something, someplace like this room where they would, I guess, they would cook. But I remember having this weirdest feeling being inside the room, and so I dropped my recorder inside the that back area, and sure enough, I catch something talking. So now, so although those houses are actually just replicas, they're not actually plantation homes that were lived in. There is still activity that happens there, and probably the reason why it has activity in the first place is because it has nothing to do with the house or whatever. It has to deal with what's inside the house. So, um, a lot of the supplies, a lot of the furniture, and even the small accessories and whatnot that they have displayed in each one of those rooms inside that house. Those things possibly could have contained some kind of energy stuck to it. But yeah, everyone says that the Hawaiian Plantation Village is haunted. And we're enjoying the atmosphere, the food, all the things that one does when traveling. And we just so happened to make it out to this. I can't remember what building it was, but I have all these different rooms used for, whatever you need to. It's kind of like a multi um, purpose room where you can have like get-togethers, or you can have different things like contests or whatever inside these small rooms. Well, not small; they're pretty big, but inside these they could have little venues, parties or markets, pop-up markets, whatever. Anyway, when I walk into this building, directly to my right, there's this hallway that goes down into a lower floor from a ramp. It goes down to a lower floor, long corridor, and I just get this really bad sense that something's around me, that something's looking at me. So I get kind of freaked out, get the heebie-jeebie skin, and I show my wife. So I said, "Look, check my skin. It's like freaking out over here." And so she goes, "Oh, why? What's going on?" So I personally thought it was some kind of manifestation. But on investigating, walking down the aisle, I get midway, not midway, but I get to a point where there are these um, electric boxes, like huge electric boxes for this massive building. Um, yeah, it had multiple panels, and I think it was giving off all this radiation, this EMF, and it was just giving me the creepiest feeling. Yeah, so it wasn't just that corridor that gave off an eerie feeling. It was also the restrooms, restrooms, right? But the way the restrooms in that building were situated were kind of like this spiral where you come from the main hallway where all the galleries are that branch off. Anyway, you walk into this open space where the door to the bathrooms are, and it goes in, comes around, and then kind of looks like a spiral. And so when I wanted to use the restroom, and I did that whole spiral in thing, and it just gave off a really creepy feeling. And I assumed it was probably because the way the bathroom were built, it holds or traps in energy, you know, energies from things that get stuck. So it's one of the things you got to be careful of when you find a house or when you're looking for a home or stuff like that, is that you get stuck with a place that is not the healthiest for people, right? You have leaching electromagnetic fields, you have mold, you have other kinds of things going on. But that's kind of weird. Kind of just went off in a tangent by falling asleep and waking up into it. I don't even know what I was talking about, but yeah, I think I should get going because I'm spending more time trying to keep myself awake than sharing. But so I just wanted to share some of these stories with you while I'm here because we actually tomorrow I get to jump on top of the bullet train. We're gonna make our way up to Hiroshima, which is gonna be really cool. So I figured a dog story about a little bit of Little Monday here at this first site that we're here at. One of the stories that I did want to end off with was back when there was that tsunami after the earthquake that kind of disrupted and affected the nuclear power plant here in Japan. Anyway, when that earthquake went off, it created a tsunami, which is basically just this mountain of water in the ocean caused from seismic activity. And so what ended up happening was this water had gone around Japan and totally, inundated the coastal areas with water. And a lot of people lost their lives that day. So there was activity that happened after the tsunami that was very, very strange. So the cabs, the taxis in Japan, the main circuit or the operator was getting calls, and there were numerous calls from one particular city that had gotten, just eaten by the tsunami. And these calls would come in looking for rides, and when the taxis would arrive to pick up their fare, they'd find that there was nobody there. And since the place had been pretty much beaten up by the tsunami, they didn't really start repairs and whatnot just yet. But basically what ended up happening was they were getting like all these calls, and they were from the ghosts of the people that had passed away in the tsunami. And they were looking for rides to go home and stuff. So I thought that was pretty amazing. And it's a lesson too, right? Like, this isn't all for us. This is just one step in the long line of steps for our immortal souls. But I thought it was pretty cool of the Japanese people to honor these calls made by these phantoms, these spirits that need these rides. And they'll drive down there. Those taxis will still go, even though they know that there's probably not going to be anyone there to pick up. But it's really cool to know that they actually drive down there and they'll wait for their fare, and then they'll close up the door and drive away with a possible hitchhiking ghost in their car. Japan is a crazy place. I'm sure it has the same amount, if not more, of paranormal activity happening here in these islands. It's very, very interesting. But yeah, like I said, it was a long day today. I felt like I needed to get this Mo'olelo Monday done. This Mo'olelo Monday was dedicated to Japan and its Japanese culture and the people that live here and live on the islands. And I just wanted to share some of the stories that I've heard and that I've experienced. Yeah, pretty crazy. Pretty crazy how energy works, Very strange to me. But anyway, I just want to say thank you for stopping by. Hope you enjoyed those paranormal tales. And I hope that you come back next time to enjoy another Mo'olelo Monday. All right, gang. Aloha. Ahui ho.